Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leaders Are Learners Academy. My name is Kevin Wayne Johnson. I am the founder and the Chief Executive Officer of the Johnson Leadership Group, and we specialize in leadership development training and also executive coaching. I am certified in each of those areas, as is my team. And we want to welcome you to this version of the Leaders Are Learners Academy, which is connected to the Johnson Leadership Group. This masterclass is the Maxwell Disc Method as it relates to personality indicators and your behavioral style. And this is the biblical version. We'll be taking a look in this masterclass at what Scripture has to say about the fact that you and I are fearfully and wonderfully made. And of course, part of my background in ministry as a pastor is to help you to better understand God's purpose and God's plan for your life. And we'll be spending some quality time here going through each of these slides and helping you to better understand your personality as well as your behavior style. I come to you after 34 years of total service with the federal government. I retired about 4 years ago, and I'm really enjoying this journey where I spend 95% of my waking hours pouring into the lives of the current and next generation of leaders. I believe that you will thoroughly enjoy this masterclass. You will have an opportunity to take a look at not only the PowerPoint slides, but we have also included a number of resources for you, which would include videos, different graphics to complement and supplement the material as we walk through each of our lessons together. Of course, we'll share some scripture as well as we move into the D and the I and the S and the C. We'll thoroughly explain what each of those are. In your resource guide, you'll also have an opportunity to take a look at some additional bonuses that we've added in terms of icebreakers. And we've also included some other information that will help you to better understand the material that I will be instructing and facilitating during our time together. What's really nice about this masterclass is that at your convenience, you can stop and you can pause to go back and take a look at the videos and to look at some of the material that has been taught. There's also what we call a game card that we'll be walking through. There's an exercise. I've also included a copy in the resources section of that for you as well. So you'll have plenty of information at your fingertips to learn about your style. And then when it's all said and done, we will encourage you to take your assessment. Take the assessment so that you can learn more about your individual style and your personality indicator as well. And you'll have time to reach out to me, and I'll be able to provide that information to you and also answer any questions that you have as we go through this process together. So as we get started, that's me. And there's my contact information, my website, as well as my phone number. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. I'm more than happy to work with you and more than happy to be a resource for you during this journey of your career progression and also your leadership journey as well. I've taken my assessment a good little while ago, and I am a C, I'm compliant. I am an S, I'm steady, and I am an I, I'm an influencer. And together, what that represents is I am a practitioner. And I'm just very practical when it comes to everything that I do. I'm pretty level-headed. I don't get upset very easily. As a matter of fact, I avoid conflict. And what's really interesting is my biblical counterpart is Paul, the Apostle Paul. Interestingly enough, Paul had a particular lifestyle before he came into the salvation experience. And then as his life was transformed on that road called Damascus, he lived a life where he wanted everyone to understand and gravitate toward the gospel. So as he traveled throughout Macedonia and Asia Minor, establishing churches and encouraging you and I and people like you and I that believe what we believe and how we believe it. He was very, very instrumental in helping the gospel to be distributed and disseminated throughout that region and then ultimately throughout the world. And interestingly enough, my three spiritual gifts are leadership, administration, and discernment. Those are my three spiritual gifts that I'm able to pull from in the scripture. So, during our time together in this masterclass, we're going to learn all about ourselves, but we're also going to learn from that self awareness all about others. Being self aware gives us the ability and the credibility to hold ourselves accountable before we hold others accountable, and to lead ourselves before we lead others. We're going to discover how God designed you. We're going to get into the strengths of each of these personality styles. There are four, DISC. And then we're going to learn how to improve our communication. Primarily our verbal communication is what we will get into for the purpose of this masterclass. Now, I mentioned at the outset about this exercise here. So this is an exercise that I would like for you to start to think about and work on, and we're going to do this together. Now, there's an extra copy of this provided for you in your resource section here in your masterclass. You can feel free to print it out and use it as a tool, and you can use it as you go forward on future activities and initiatives as well. But for the purpose of this exercise, I would like for you to find the number one and circle it, and then find number two and circle it, and then find number three, circle it, and number four, circle number four, and keep going in order: 5, 6, 7, 8. Keep going. Go as high as you can in the very limited amount of time that I'll be providing for you. Number one in order: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Go as far as you can, and when you find those numbers in sequential order, circle and then move to the next number and see how far you can go. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds. You've been working now for about 25 seconds, now 30 seconds, and I'm going to give you just a few more. We'll probably go to 45 seconds and I'll have you to stop. Now, it's not really a race per se. You're not racing against anyone, but we're just going to see how far you can go with no other information other than to find 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, etc. All right, now stop. Okay? Now, here's the next part of the exercise. Now, I have taken the liberty to divide this for you in quadrants. Now, starting afresh, take a look at 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what you'll start to see is that there's a trend. You'll find number 1 in the upper left quadrant, and you'll find number 2 in the upper right quadrant, and 3 in the lower right quadrant, and then the number 4 in the lower left quadrant. And if you continue in that counterclockwise motion, then you'll find the other numbers as well: 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So keep going. You've been working now since I've shown you this in the different quadrants. It's been about 25 seconds. Keep going counterclockwise. And now what you're probably finding is that you're able to locate these numbers much easier because you have a marker and you have instructions. The first time around, you didn't really have much to go on other than just my instructions. But now you have more information, you have more guidance, and it's a little bit more logical in terms of the flow. And if you compare the numbers that you found in the first exercise to the numbers that you found in this exercise, it's slightly different. You'll probably find a few more given the information that was provided. Okay, you may stop. And that was really the purpose of the exercise. You see, you'll find that in sequential order, these numbers are strategically located in a given quadrant based upon the information that has been provided. Very interesting. As we go forward in our time together, you're going to see why all of this makes sense. Here's another exercise for you. Take a look at these patterns. Again, upper left, upper right, lower left in each of these quadrants. And as best you can, try to figure out what these patterns represent. And that's really all of the information that I have for you that I can provide. I'll give you a clue. It's really, really up close. Well, you probably already knew that. That might not actually be a clue, but it's pretty close up. And it may be a little challenging to discern because you don't really have any other information to go by other than what I just shared. However, take a look at this next image. Voila! Now it makes sense because this gives you a much better view of those different patterns. So now you'll see a tiger and a Dalmatian and a giraffe and a zebra. Now, you may have gotten it the first time, and if so, that's great. But most of us just did not have quite enough information to go by in order to capture these images. So you'll see Wayne Dyer here over on the right. Wayne Dyer is a very well-known business expert here in the United States of America. He says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? Your viewpoint and your perspective. Absolutely. So true. So as you take a look at this particular image, as we dive into this masterclass, DISC, D-I-S-C, you'll find that this particular person who's leading this meeting is using her influence to capture the attention of 7 of her colleagues. Now, we can't see directly the gentleman that's right in front of us. We can't see his eye contact, but we can make an assumption based upon what we see that she has the full attention of all 7 of her colleagues as she's leading the meeting. She appears to be friendly. She appears to be approachable. She actually appears to actually enjoy what she's doing, and she really appears to be collaborative and in partnership with her 7 colleagues because she has their attention. So these are all examples of what we'll be spending our time in this masterclass unpacking and learning just a little bit better as we move forward together. So here in the book of Psalm, chapter 139, verse 14, this is the New International Version. God's word says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And that's for us to keep in mind during our time together that God took the time to fearfully and wonderfully make us. And we are very unique, and our perspectives and our viewpoints are to be valued, and we have those for different reasons. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. That's very, very comforting scripture that we can apply to our time of learning. Now, here's an image that kind of keeps things in perspective for us. We know that there is a much, much higher power. We know that we have a creator, and we know that God Almighty is in the midst of everything that we do. And just think about this particular image, that God is always in touch with each and every one of us and everything that we do, everything that we say. He's always in control. So, as a part of this masterclass, but in life in general, let's always look to Him first and foremost in everything that we do. He controls the earth, He controls the sun, He controls the universe. Just by the tip of His finger, He's in total and complete control. Now, here's an example of a disc style where these two are working one on one. And the gentleman is very deliberate and very intentional in giving detailed instruction and guidance on what needs to be done, and is more than likely making himself available for any questions that she might have in terms of a follow up or a follow through. Some of us, truth be told, we work better in one on one situations than we do with groups. And guess what? It's important that we know that so that as we go forward in our responsibility with the projects and the initiatives that we're working on, we know what works best for us, how we thrive, and how we shine. So, this is an example where someone is working better in a one on one environment as opposed to a group environment. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that and what it means in terms of your DISC personality indicator. In other instances, you may love the camaraderie and the partnership and the friendship and all of the cooperation that goes hand in hand with people that you know and you like. You may enjoy interjecting some humor as a part of the conversation and just enjoying the time together. And that might be you. And we're going to find out if that is you, what is your DISC personality indicator and your behavioral style, because that's an indication in terms of how you work best. And we need to know it, and we need to honor it, and we need to respect it. Vice versa, you might be the type of person that is really, really good at giving instruction and direction, being laser focused on the project at hand, and then being able to communicate it effectively to another person. You might be the type of person that really enjoys giving guidance and instruction, but also making yourself available as an advocate and as a supporter to make sure that everything gets done in a very proper way. And as you can see here in this image, she seems to be really, really focused on the task at hand, having a seat with the paperwork in her hand, with the ink pen there, taking notes, giving detailed instruction on what to do. But equally important, she gives me the impression that she's there to help and to support and to be an advocate in the event that a question may arise. And then you might just be that person that really, really is task oriented, and you have a desire to write everything down in your notebook. That's sort of me, the practitioner, the CSI that I referenced to in the very beginning. That's sort of how I operate. I like to write everything down just to make sure that I don't forget, and then have an opportunity to go back and then check it off once it's done. Now, I know we live in a technological age, and we can do all of this with our iPad and with our iPhone and on our laptop and our desktop, but I still prefer, just like him, to write it down and to go back and to be able to check it off when an action is completed. That might be your personality indicator. That might be your behavioral style. That's okay. We just need to know it so that we can honor it and we can respect it. So, the message here is just don't put anyone in a box. Allow people their freedom, their flexibility, respect their views and their perspectives on a number of different topics and a number of different areas in life. Just have the opportunity to not put them in a box, but to see them for who they are, because we just read in the book of Psalm 139, that you and I are fearfully and wonderfully made. So getting to know people just who they are is the best thing that we can do, and it's also the best thing for them as well. If you walk through any building that may be 200, 300, maybe 400 years old, you'll look up in the ceiling and you'll see a number of columns that look something like this. And what's really interesting is that each of us tends to see the same image, but in a different way. And as I travel to the different museums, when I travel to different cities, regardless of what type of museum it may be, it tends to be in one of the older buildings, the older architecture. And I marvel at the columns and the painting and the material with which it's made. But even as you and I are looking at this image right now as I speak, we probably take away something slightly different. And if you look really, really close down the row of these columns, each one of these has a slightly different pattern. So their purpose is the same, to hold the building up, to make sure it's sturdy. But what we see is just a little bit different because the pattern is slightly different in each one of these columns. From a distance, they may look the same, but up close and personal, they're all slightly different, but they have the same purpose. So let's go through the origin of human behavior studies. This is a historical perspective. Now, just be very honest with you. The gentleman on the left, I do not know how to pronounce his name, but the gentleman on the right is Hippocrates. We've heard that name down throughout history. These gentlemen are very instrumental in the origin of human behavior studies, as is Carl Jung, who designed the Myers-Briggs, something that I took twice, 7 years apart, and my Myers-Briggs came back as an ISTJ. So Carl Jung introduced us to this concept, Myers-Briggs, around thinking, feeling, sensing, as well as intuition. And then not too far after comes William Marston, who designed what we now know as the DISC. And in terms of our personality indicator and our behavioral styles, it falls under dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. So it kind of dictates, if you would, an assessment of who we are, how we operate, how we communicate, and how we deal with other people, both in our personal and our professional development and journeys as well. So these four men really give us a historical perspective in being able to understand human behavior, which includes both our personality as well as our behavioral styles as well. Now, what actually shapes our personality? And there are three primary keys to take away in terms of what shapes our personality. First of all, heredity, where we came from, our family line. That has a lot to do with shaping who we are and the personality that we have. Great grandparents, grandparents, and our parents, based upon what we observe and what they have taught us over a number of years. Over to the left is our environment that represents the space that we operate in, whether it's the workplace or the neighborhood meeting or the social or civic organization or our church, or a combination of all of the above, including the home. The environment that we're in and that we spend a great deal of our time in has a lot to do with how we shape our personality. And then over on the left, you'll see role models, parents, grandparents, friends, colleagues, neighbors, acquaintances, co-workers. The different role models that we see have a great deal to do with influencing our personality. So we find here by doing our homework and our due diligence that what shapes our personality are really threefold: heredity, the environment, and the role models that we find ourselves around, oftentimes, more times than not. So, as you can see here, in each of these different scenarios that we saw a little bit earlier, the gentleman to the left, the upper left, represents a dominant personality indicator. The three gentlemen who definitely appear to be good friends, influence. The young lady having a seat with a sweater and a notepad in her lap and the ink pen, steady. And the gentleman in the lower right left quadrant, the C, represents compliant because, again, writing things down, checking things off as they're completed, sort of reminds us of those of us who definitely want to be compliant. If there are 10 different actions that need to be completed today, we're going to write down those 10 actions. And as they're completed, we give ourselves credit by checking those off. So dominant, influence, steady, and compliant. And we're going to get into each of these as a part of this masterclass. So take a quick look at this. We're inside of a chapel, and you see the priest there standing in the front. And I'm going to ask you to just think and pause and gather your thoughts in terms of what you may think is going on in this image. One of the things that come to mind when I see this particular image is the priest is using his influence as he is delivering his message or his sermon to those in the sanctuary. And so I'm thinking influence because you can see that the parishioners are looking forward, so they're giving him attention. He's looking back out, he's giving them eye contact, and he's using his influence with his words to share from God what they need for this particular time to bring them comfort and to bring them joy. So when I see this image, I'm thinking about influence. And when I see this image, I'm thinking again about compliant because here we are having to write down everything that we might need. Now, we're going on vacation. We're going somewhere sunny to have a good time to relax where it's warm and there are beaches and we get to sightsee and somebody else gets to drive. But because I'm a C, I'm compliant, I still want to write everything down just to make sure I don't forget anything. So if I'm traveling internationally, I'm reminding myself that I need my passport. And guess what? It may not make a lot of sense to some of us, but I'm reminding myself that I need to bring some money and a camera and sunglasses, and then you go down the entire list. But what's really interesting and affirming is that once we identify these items and we remember to bring them, then we check off and we give ourselves credit. And that's very fulfilling and is very comforting for those of us in the C area. Well, you can see here inside of a convertible, they're on their way somewhere. Uh, they have on the wristband, perhaps they're on their way to the amusement park, uh, anywhere where they may be going, they're just having a blast. And these might be more so in the area of influencing because they're just having fun. and it looks like it's a beautiful day outside. The top is down, and they're going for it. Sunglasses on, some have on the hat, and they look like they are about to move into a situation that's going to be absolutely unforgettable, and they are probably eyes, which are influencers. Here's another image of a group of coworkers. Again, you have someone that appears to be taking the lead, the gentleman in the white shirt and the black tie. It appears that he's sort of leading the meeting, but at the same time, he has a colleague right next to him, the young lady, who's stooping over, giving eye contact. They may be operating as a team to deliver a very key message or perhaps prepare the team for a big project and a big initiative that's about to take place. So, in this particular case, again, using some influence, but at the same time, dominant in terms of being able to lead this team, having them to pay close attention to the instructions and the directions, and then having a pair of leaders that are actually stepping up and leading the way forward. So, all of that is really introductory information into the DISC method, personality indicators. And now let's start to unpack what each of these different areas represent. And as we go through here, again, pay close attention to self, but then also think about how it impacts others based upon your style and your personality indicator. So, and DI is outgoing, a CS is reserved, a CD is task oriented, and an IS is people oriented. And one of the things that you'll walk away with as a part of this masterclass is you'll find out very, very quickly which of these really applies to you. Are you more reserved or outgoing? Are you more task oriented or people oriented? And it ties into the D, the I, S, and C, which we will learn more about during our time together. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look very intently as we unpack each of these different areas to discover a little bit more about you, and you'll also discover a little bit more about others as well. So, you remember not too long ago when you first learned how to drive and how fearful and how much anxiety and trepidation that you had because it's something new that you had never done before. And it was a matter of keeping both hands on the steering wheel, paying close attention to that drive you're about to take down the road, making sure that you put just enough pressure on the pedal, not to exceed the speed limit, and then being able to take your foot off of the pedal and putting it over on the brake. And remember, it took a few months, quite frankly, to get used to this new experience. But once you got used to it, it's like second nature. It just became very, very easy over time to the point where you probably don't even think about it that much anymore. But in the beginning, it took some time and you got used to it and you became accustomed to it. And so it is with understanding your DISC personality indicator and behavioral style. As we start out new, this is new information. But over time, as you study it more and you get more accustomed to it, you'll start to see how it fits you and how you can be better at leading others and working with others as well. So let's start with the D. That makes perfect sense. So take a look over here to your upper right and you'll see that 3%. Interestingly enough, only 3% of all people fit the dominant personality indicator, where they seek control, they're decisive, direct, and results oriented. Only 3%. Looks and sounds like a very small number, but all the data and the statistics are verifiable and validatable. Only 3%. So that's a very, very small population compared to the I and the S and the C. And what you find here is that when it comes to making decisions, you'll find that these different images represent different ways in which these individuals communicate. And so there's something that each and every one of them has to say. The question is, who goes first? They all have that dominant personality style. They all have something that they want to get out. That's what these symbols represent. But the question is, who goes first? In this particular instance, they all want to go, but they're working hard to yield one to another. So that's what this kind of represents. And again, only 3% of the population represent this style in terms of their behavior and in terms of their personality. So ideally, if they all went at the same time, they would all be speaking over top of each other, and they would be saying something slightly different. And so that's why you see the different shapes and the different colors there as well. The I, interestingly enough, the numbers now go up just a little bit more, where we have 11% of the population that are persuasive, spontaneous, friendly, and spotlight is what the I represents. The I is for influence, and 11% of the population falls within this particular area. And you can see here where each of these men and women are really taking the time to influence one another. They are casually dressed, a well lit area, plenty of space in between them all so that they can all make eye contact at any given time with anybody within that semicircle. They're so relaxed, right? Don't seem to be under any pressure. And one person has a clipboard in their hand, but I don't see anyone with a pen or paper in their hand. And they seem very happy, very relaxed, very casual. And in this environment, they are influencing one another, a little lighthearted and much more casual in their approach. Now, the next area here is the S. This is where the overwhelming majority of the population resides. 69% of us have an S as a part of our personality indicator and our behavioral style. So, team oriented, follow through, loyalty, and acceptance are the key characteristics of the S. And again, 69%, that's quite a few, by far exceeds all of the other categories. That's close to 70%, which means that's almost 3 out of 4, which is very, very high, very significant. And as you can see here, both the electronic gadget in the left hand as well as the manual book in which we write things down in the right hand. So even though we have the technology and even though we have what appears to be a calendar or perhaps some way we're tracking the project that we're working on, we still have a high degree of comfort in terms of writing it down and being able to have a checklist when we're done with a particular project or a particular initiative. And that's me. I'm still in the mode where I like to write things down and give myself credit when something is completed. Very, very interesting that we think that way. And then last but certainly not least, in the compliant area, the C, 17%, approximately 17% fall within this particular category and stands for compliant, of course, but also very analytical, and they are planners and they have a need to be accurate. Accuracy is very key and very, very important in the life of a C. So approximately 17% fall in this particular category. So as you can see, Now, that makes up the totality of DISC: dominant, influencing, compliant, and steady. Now, let's walk through a number of areas that we consider strengths and weaknesses or areas of improvement. And then we'll talk very briefly about the greatest fear for each of these, the DICS. Now, think about in terms of yourself and your style and your indicator and those with which you will work best based upon their style. Now, you and I can work with everyone at some level, but we work better with others where we can complement and collaborate and build bridges and connect with others. And you see it happen all the time, both in our personal and professional development. So a D seeks results. They're active and they're a multitasker. They're driven by authority. They easily try to take control. They embrace change as long as it helps them to get results. They're comfortable responding to direct confrontation, and they definitely treasure loyalty. But interestingly enough, for a person that's dominant, and this is only 3% of the population, their greatest fear is being taken advantage of. That's very interesting that a dominant personality would feel that way, but it's so very, very true. And take a look at all of these different strengths. They thrive on resistance, they're decisive, productive, strong-willed, and all of these other strengths that we reference here. But they also have some areas in their lives that are considered obstacles. So they tend to be argumentative, insensitive, inconsiderate, domineering. These all probably sound familiar. Opinionated, impatient, not complimentary, cannot relax, unforgiving. So these are obstacles and things that the D definitely needs to work on to improve and to develop as a part of your career development as well as your leadership journey as well. You see here at the bottom it says they do not apologize and can appear cold. So these are all true when it comes to the person that has that dominant style. Take a look at this video. This will be very, very helpful as a part of our understanding together.
Thank you all for sticking with it. This has been the worst quarter in the history of the lady scarf industry. Who knew it was going to be 80 plus degree weather most days? But I have it on high authority that the new CEO of our company is going to do great things. And I give you John Smith.
All right, team. All right, team. I'm a no-huddle offense kind of guy, so I'm cutting right to the chase. We're going to blitz the market with something brand new, a line of socks. They're going to make you feel as fast as Deion Sanders, but you're going to look like prime time. We've got the ball, and we're ready to take it to the house. You, name. All right, you, name.
It's Kim.
Karen. Can you picture this team in the red zone, ready to punch it in?
It's Kim.
I can too, Karen. I can too. That's why I've added something to sweeten the deal for everybody this quarter. That's right, my season tickets. We make gold this quarter, you're all going to tailgate with me on opening day. Now, who's got questions?
No huddle. Red zone. Do they sell scarves?
Those are sports metaphors. Okay, so you're not a football fan, are you? Let me try doing this a different way. So, at my last company, we were a paper company, and I turned them into a paper and envelope company. It was a huge opportunity for us to do a ton of great things with a very similar product that complemented what we already did. that's what I see here. You guys are a scarf company. I know you have the expertise. I've seen your work. It's going to be a bit of a stretch, but together as a team, we can take our share of the sock market too. Now, who's with me?
All right. Now, just keep in mind that this particular slide is available in your resources section here in the curriculum. So feel free to go back anytime you like and just replay any of these videos. We're playing it for you here for the purpose of the masterclass, but I've also loaded them separately in your resources section here in the course, so you can always go back and take a look at it. In this particular case, that was a dominant style that initially just didn't work, and he had to rewind to gather his team and actually build some bridges. So that brings us to the very next one, which is the I. And the I seeks a friendly environment and is always active. It isn't that bright yellow shirt just kind of like just letting you know that I'm a happy relationship oriented type person. They're great storytellers, they're encouragers, and they have treasures with great experiences with others. That's an influencer. But their greatest fear is rejection and loss of approval. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with an I. They definitely fear being rejected and not having your approval. But here are some strengths that they operate by. They're very persuasive, they're social, they're generous, they're charismatic, spontaneous and creative, enthusiastic, all of which you can see in the demeanor and the body language of this gentleman here that's on display. They are comfortable in the spotlight. So if you have someone you need to call upon to do a presentation in the 11th hour, the I might be the right person to go with. They love to have fun. They're also optimistic and they're likable. But just like with each of these different areas, they do have some obstacles. They have areas of development and areas of improvement. And an I tends to be undisciplined. They do tend to be undependable and disorganized and naive. They can come across as appearing phony and distracted and impulsive as well. They do waste time, they don't follow through, they don't necessarily listen, and they can be forgetful. So, again, in each of these areas, there are some strengths, but there are also some obstacles that we need to be aware of as well. And I remember many, many years ago, because part of me as an I, because we tend to say yes a lot, means that we overcommit. So we're saying yes to some things that we know we can't really fulfill, unfortunately, because we want to feel accepted. So here's this next video. This one is really, really interesting. We're going to look at Mary's 10th day, and then we're going to fast forward and look at her 25th day. And remember, this is in the area of influence.
Hey, Mary. Got some more reports from procurement for you to process. Sort of reminds you of Office Space, huh? The movie? TPS reports? Guess you're too young for that one.
Well, I was still in diapers when you were up. Getting back into diapers
So you kind of see what happens when you find out that you have so many things in common one with another. Now, from this point forward, as a part of their relationship, over that 15-day period, they will now be able to influence one another because they have built a relationship based on common ground as they go forward. Very interesting in terms of how we go about influencing other people. One of the key ways is to make sure that we connect by way of common ground. So here's the next one, and this has to do with steady, right? Here is the bulk of the population. So seeks a team environment and is very loyal, easygoing and agreeable, evenly paced, a good listener and compassionate, right? And treasures peaceful relationships. That's very key and very, very important. But the greatest fear, as you see at the bottom, is the loss of security and confrontation. And so the S is part of my personality as well. As I mentioned in the introduction, I am a practitioner, but I avoid conflict as much as I possibly can. It's not necessarily a fear of mine, it's just something that I like to avoid because it just doesn't bring me a great deal of comfort. So here are many of the strengths: sentimental and secure and steady and stable, a team player, faithful, finds the easy way, good listener, meditates, peaceful, routine oriented. These are all strengths of the S, but here are some areas that need to be worked on in terms of improvement and development. We call these obstacles. Can be a little bit too laid back, sarcastic, resist change, slower pace, slow to start, difficulty saying no. And you can also see over on the right, needs reassurance and may be skeptical or indecisive. So, whether it's us in terms of our own self awareness or others as it relates to those that we work with within our sphere of influence, or even those that we live with, these are all very, very important to recognize and acknowledge that they exist, but it also that helps us as we go forward again in our leadership journey. Take a look at this video. This is very, very interesting and very, very dynamic.
Last delivery to our client promised an arrival time of 2 p.m. 2:04 is not 2 p.m. I expect excellence from every member of our team, and I'm going to experience that excellence moving forward. Am I right? Very good. Wow, she's so organized. It's gonna save me hours, days. Kim Miller to Ricky Ford's office. Kim Miller. I was going to compliment you, thank you, and talk to you about how to teach this to others, how to deliver like this as manager of the department. But our department doesn't have a manager, though. It does now. Congratulations.
All right. So, as you can see, great work, steady as she goes, falling in alignment with what the boss is expecting, and really, really interesting how that all worked out. So she was scared to death, and it came out with a great outcome where she received a promotion. So this last area here, the C, is where this group seeks an environment that honors logic and facts. So they're looking for detailed information that can be verified and validated. And so they're very conscientious, they're accurate, detailed oriented, and they treasure perfection. So the biggest fear here is in the area of criticism. So here are the strengths. They're very analytical, they're planners, they're genius prone, actually, self sacrificing, idealistic, high quality work, orderly and organized, logical and persistent. And there are a number of other areas here as well. Deep thinker and serious are two others that come to mind as well. These are the strengths that they carry. But in the area of obstacles, they tend to be moody and can be critical. They do prefer to work alone. Socially insecure kind of goes with that preference of working alone. Hard to please, slow to start. They can be rigid and legalistic. And so, again, this C is part of my personality indicator and my behavioral style as well, because I am a CSI, which is a practitioner. Appears cold and distant, not necessarily the intent, but in terms of how it comes across. So think about these again when we look at ourselves through the mirror and when we look at others through the lens. Kind of gives us ideas of strengths and obstacles along the way. So, John Maxwell reminds us now that connecting increases your influence in every situation. Taking the time, having a conversation with people, communicating with people, getting to know people, you'll find out that we have so much more in common than we do differences. Communication has everything to do with speaking very clearly, speaking into that microphone, speaking into that Alexa, making it known what's on our heart, what's on our mind, being very clear so that we can cross bridges and we can build bridges and we can connect on common ground. That's part of the relationship building. And that also helps us to get to know other people, not just in terms of their disc style and their indicator type, but also in terms of what helps them to work best, what areas of their strengths and their obstacles do we need to be aware of so that we can work together one on one in a team environment and organizationally as well. So that's really what that represents. Much like this particular graphic, where we're all working together as a team trying to get things done. Now, within the confines of this particular image, even though there's a large group of people here that are on display, they're also kind of sectioned off, if you would, in individual meetings. You'll see a group in the back, you'll see two gentlemen together, you'll see a couple of young ladies that kind of seem to be there on their own, and then a couple of other people there in groups of either three or four. So even though they are one big team, from time to time we do gravitate toward others that share our same disc indicator style. And that's not unusual. It's just a matter of respecting and honoring their particular style so that we can together get things done and move the organization forward. So you may remember going back quite a number of years, actually prior to the actual telephone being invented, you would have two gadgets that look similar to this with the string running back and forth to give us the sound that we were trying to get. The takeaway here from this particular slide is for you and I to always be aware that we have to be very, very careful in what we are communicating, because the way we communicate has everything to do with the way the intended message will be received. Because you're going to have some D's and some I's and some S and some C's within your sphere of influence, and they don't all receive information the same way. So that means we can't necessarily communicate the same way, but take the time, be patient, persevere, communicate very, very clearly, and make sure that the person on the other end gets the message, which means from time to time we'll have to ask them just to confirm, did they understand exactly what we said? Because the intended message is not always received in the manner it was intended. So when you communicate with a D, keep these in mind. Ask what, not how, right? The D is dominant. They just want to get to the bottom line. Don't ramble, focus on results. That's the way to communicate with a D. When you're communicating with an I, an influencer, don't do all the talking, and definitely don't ignore their ideas. As a matter of fact, acknowledge that you have heard their ideas, right? And definitely, because they're an influencer, allow time for socializing. That's very, very key. And also have an opportunity to follow up. You want to make sure that you follow up with them as well. Now, the person that's steady, that S, you want to make sure that you have a friendly tone in your discussion, because otherwise they'll be turned off and they won't actually receive what it is that you're having a conversation with them about. And show interest in them as a person. Don't be overly aggressive because they're steady, right? Make sure you minimize any potential of any type of a conflict or confrontation. They don't like that. All right. And then at the very bottom, give them time to adjust to any changes because they're steady. They don't like confrontation and they don't like change. And then, and when you're communicating with a C, make sure they have all of the details that they need. Right? They want the facts, and they have to be validatable and verifiable. That's just the audience that they are. That's just who they are. Be very, very specific and precise in your explanation, and you do have to be patient. Okay? So these are tips on how to communicate with each of these different styles because everyone's different. So whether you're looking at a outside structure, whether you are actually inside of the facility, whether you're actually with your scripture, with your Bible, taking detailed notes by way of handwriting the notes, or whether you're participating in what we see here, the foot washing, which is an act of service. All of the above have to do with you and I communicating with people and interacting with people in a slightly different way because we're all different learners and we function day in and day out just a little bit different. Some of us are more dominant, some of us are more influencing, some of us are a bit more steady, and others of us are more compliant. And what's key in your personal and professional development is to pay close attention to those within your sphere of influence. Understand how they operate. It'll be better for us and it will be better for them as well. So, building effective relationships is really key and foundational. That's why we have it here at the bottom. Really, really foundational to our way going forward. Knowing how to interact with each of these different groups of people in a way that makes them comfortable, but also prepares us to be efficient and effective in their present as we move forward in whatever initiative or whatever project that we are responsible for. So, quiet time, even though we're together, we're kind of working independently and kind of doing our own analysis independently and individually. And when you're communicating with a DO, for example, who is a precisionist, here are some examples of what to do and what not to do. Because a precisionist is someone who is a C and an S. The C and the S is above the midpoint line. So in this case, Sally is compliant and she's also steady. In other words, she's reserved. If you go back to one of the very first slides that we showed, because she's a C and she's an S, she is reserved. And so some of the better ways to communicate with her would be just to create a favorable environment that is personable and agreeable. In other words, present yourself as friendly and approachable to Sally. But at the very bottom, don't be pushy or overly aggressive or demanding or too confrontational or critical of their actions, because it won't be a good conversation if we did that. Now, one of the many takeaways from this course is to get each and every one of you interested to want to take your own assessment. And when you do, you will receive a 33-page comprehensive both narrative and numerical score report. And what we have done is for you is we have provided a copy of a sample report. It looks like this. This is the cover in the resources section here in the Masterclass, because that'll give you an idea of what your report would look like once you completed your assessment. And in order to take your assessment, just reach out to me directly and I can get that to you directly to your email. And all of my contact information is available for you, and I will give you all of the detailed instructions that you would need. You would have others within your sphere of influence to have some words to say about you, but by and large, this is a assessment that you take on your own, and you receive a really, really nice comprehensive report. And as we were saying, going through the couple of illustrations, as you can see here at the bottom, under Sally sample, you'll see her style is a precisionist. She's a CS. So that's how I knew, based upon being a CS, that she's very reserved. And we have to be careful in how we handle ourselves and how we handle her and deal with her as well. So know your style. And remember this particular example where once you provide people with additional details, they are more equipped to solve a problem or to make a decision. And they can also do it at a much faster pace. Remember people's visuals and people's perspectives and people's views based upon what they see and also how we communicate. So people see something a little bit different up close than they do when the picture is a little bit further back. And again, just like we mentioned earlier, the key takeaway here is right here in this particular area. Upper left, dominant. Upper right, influencing. Lower right, steady. Lower left, compliant. And as you can see, each of these different personality indicators and behavioral styles represent something just a little bit different. Get to know self and get to know others as well. So, again, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And if you take a look at the image of all of these men and women, everyone's happy, everyone's smiling, everyone feeling good, everyone understanding who they are in God's sight and in God's image. So, as a takeaway from this masterclass, please write down 5 qualities about yourself that really express who you are and your style. 5 qualities. You probably have many, many more, but just for the purpose of this class, write down 5 qualities about yourself that really express who you are and your style. And again, if you have any questions on any of the content, any of the curriculum, any of the information that's provided for you, any of the valuable resources that we include for you, which would be the actual PowerPoint slides themselves. There's also a copy of the training flyer in the event that you want to share information with your colleagues and with your friends about this masterclass. Any of the 3 videos that we shared with you as a part of the masterclass, I have uploaded those separately for you as well. We have a number of different images for you to glean from that complement the material. We have a copy of the sample report, what the report looks like when you take your DISC assessment. We have the number sheet there that we included for you. You can just download that and print it out and use that yourself and different exercises that maybe you might lead. And then there's a separate icebreaker PowerPoint that's included as a part of this course that you can use in any of your sessions in terms of icebreakers with people that you work with. You might be an instructor yourself. Feel free to use that. It's all part of this masterclass. All right. So again, my name is Kevin Johnson, and I'm very, very excited for the opportunity to have spent this time with you. I'm glad that you've made the investment in yourself here at the Leaders Are Learners Academy. I really, really hope that you thoroughly enjoy this masterclass. And I also look forward to seeing you in some of the other courses that we have here as well as a part of the Academy. You can reach out to me through my website and also through my phone number if you need any additional information. And I look forward to seeing you again at some point in the very near future. All the best to you in your career progression and in your leadership journey. And remember, God loves you, and so do I. Bye bye.